super interesting topic here. If you don't mind muting, guys, I think that'll be helpful for the conversation. Yeah, thank you. So very quick presentation on myself. So I'm Nico Druelle. I'm running the Revenue Architect. We are a consultancy focused on revenue operation, helping C to Series B company with anything RevOps, go-to-market engineering, implementing tools and strategy, tools like Cargo, to basically build scalable processes and create growth. Having said that, today the topic we're covering is a topic that made a lot of noise over the last few years because it's a very efficient way to acquire customers. So champion tracking, also called as job change, depending on the platform, depending on a team, is at a high level a way to follow your champion from one company to the other. So today we'll go over a few things. We'll go over why this is an important signal, and regardless of your company, regardless of your stage and country. Then we'll dive into some Salesforce consideration. So this is going to be a Salesforce focused conversation on the architecture front. This is what we focus on, by the way, the Revenue Architect, Salesforce only. And then we'll dive into a more concrete example. And we'll look at Zilla, and Jason has built that workflow for their team. So we'll do a dive into the workflow and explain how he built it. But before we jump in, I just want to say that this is like a very conversational, workshop. So if you have questions, if you feel free to, raise your hand, and if you want to emphasize a point, please do it. Let's keep this conversational and interactive.
Very good. And Nico, just before we dive in, I think it might help just to give Jason like 30 seconds to present himself, because I'm quickly going to do a deep dive into his implementation. So Jason, thank you for taking out the time to show us how you've implemented champions. I give you the mic. Maybe tell us, who is Jason? What have you built at Zilla? And how has champions impacted your pipeline?
Yeah, for sure. So thanks for having me. I'm the Director of Revenue Operations at Zilla Security, where we're focusing on building a modern identity governance and automation platform. And a lot of my focus is on just how to best enable our go-to-market team across sales, marketing. I work with engineering a lot as well, and just how do we make our customer experience better and make it simpler to do business with us. Certainly, we're a smaller company still and growing, and a lot of our revenue comes from referrals. And I think referral selling is probably one of the easiest ways to get into account and the most sure ways. And I think champion tracking is one of the ways to just automate how to build onto that. So yeah, happy to be part of the discussion.
Sweet.
Excellent.
Thanks,
All yours,
Jason.
Nico.
Yeah. So let's dive in. So at a very high level, why champion tracking is such a valuable signal, and why is it a good idea for most teams to think about implementing it? So data decay is obviously a big issue for every one of us in revenue operation. Not everyone has the same attrition. Certain industries have very high, turnovers. Thinking about, tech, B2B SaaS in the US, for example, averages around 12 to 16 months. So this is a very high attrition rate. So you're going to have different efficiency and different, volumetry depending on the industry. Obviously, the certain industry to which this doesn't really apply, or very little. Like if we think about, government, public organization, there's way less attrition, so that's not going to be as efficient. So the next, the signal becomes very relevant because there's a window of time when someone joins an organization, whether you talk about cybersecurity, finance, or HR. When someone joins an organization, especially in leadership position, that's when budget gets unlocked, right? So that's basically the best time to sell. So there's an element of timing with that signal that gives you a huge advantage. And on top of that, you have basically an ability to capitalize on existing relationships that you built in the past. So that means shorter sales cycle. That means higher conversion rate. We see the opportunity win rate is 3.5 times X the one of a regular one. And that also means technically zero CAC, right? You acquire the customer once, you do the effort to acquire him once, you make him a champion, and then over the life of that champion, as long as he's in an industry, you're going to be able to capitalize on that sale and basically have him adopt a solution as long as he's going into a company that is not an existing account for you. And last one is, that makes it very compelling to use is the signal scales as you grow, and it scales because basically bigger business means that you're going to have more people that change job, more attrition, and you're going to have more customers, and that means that you're going to have exponential returns on those pipeline. And there's success stories, I'll mention a few that I'm close to. At PayFeed, for example, it helped the pipeline generation. Was responsible for 20 to 25% of the pipeline generation at some point. Company in the US as well, I think Gong, SalesLoft, all those guys were using those signals that represent significant part of the pipeline, and it's also a very predictable pipeline motion. Meaning, once you know the average pipeline per month generated from that signal, you're able to predict it pretty well and scale it pretty well. So then we'll just look quickly into the different use cases per function. So here we talked about sales. I think that's the obvious use case, right? From an acquisition standpoint, you've closed a champion, and that person leaves the company and go to another company. Here you have you can increase your conversion rates. You can you have this low CAC element and so on. But I think the hidden benefit resides around customer success, because here you can win twice. As we mentioned before, that the timing is important because you have the champion joining a new company, but it also means that the old company is most likely going to have to replace that champion. That means you're going to have to one, acquire a new customer, but two, maintain, prevent churn, maintain the existing customer, and potentially upsell the existing customer, because the key decision maker at a champion that's going to join is going to have budgets that you can benefit from. So that's kind of the double nice effect of this on customer success. And for marketing purposes, there's obviously when you talk about ABM strategies, those signals should definitely be looked at from a retargeting standpoint or ABM standpoint, so they can fuel also some interesting workflow on the marketing front, which is less talked about. And then some common pitfalls here that I've listed, and Jason, feel free to add some that you might be thinking of. So at least in the company that I work for and the client that I'm advising, what I'm striving to achieve is making sure that there's one contact per person in the real world and one account per company in the real world. There's different vision on this, and I think, Jason, you might have a different opinion here, but my thinking is that when a contact leaves a given company, I don't want to create an additional contact, even though if the email is different, because we're going to have potentially, even if we create, gating mechanism, we're probably going to put ourselves in a situation where that old contact and that old email might be reached out to. That can have different impact on deliverability, and I would rather not be in a situation. So I always try to maintain contact unique. Jason?
Yeah, no, it's certainly a good point, and I've chosen to go the path of keeping a previous contact record for the person at their previous position, largely for historical data. Though, to Nico's point, if you do something like that, you definitely want to have conditions in place where, in my case, I would mark a contact that they're no longer at the company. Also, essentially, not quite put them on a do not contact, but flag them that they're not eligible to contact. So our outreach tools like SalesLoft, they are excluded from any automation against those contacts. So you don't have outreach to improper records that could cause negative impacts for you. So that you certainly want to have those things in place if you choose to have a multiple contact for the person. I think absolutely having a single account for a company is critical, especially if you are scoring the company and how relevant they are to your ICP.
Yep, 100%. The next one that I identify is, having orphan accounts, and orphan accounts are sort of the consequence of changing the contact from the old account to the new company that you just joined. And what it means is that you no longer know who's the champion in that given account, and you can't really engage with it. So a good practice here would be to have someone basically have a workflow that whenever the job changes happen, that no longer not only you get the champion for the new company, but you also automatically find a new champion or an alternative champion in the existing account to prevent orphan accounts. And the third one is transferring historical relationship, and I'll explain how we can basically create a junction object to ensure historical relationships are being maintained through job changes. Derek, I saw that I don't have the Google conversation. I can read the comments. Let me see.
No worries, it was just a message. So if someone has a challenge
Okay.
that or pitfall we haven't covered in this slide, that's a good thing to note so that we can come back to it in the Q&A.
Yeah, something I certainly would include, because it would help you avoid a potential pitfall, but not all champions are created the same. I think there are multiple streams to consider for champions, particularly depending on your sales cycle, right? So at Zilla Security, where you're doing enterprise sales, and that's a longer sales cycle. So even if you don't close an opportunity, oftentimes the people you'll work with that are champions or economic buyers, they still have a positive experience, especially if they went through some type of proof event with you. So track those people as well. If they leave and you didn't necessarily win that deal, those could be people that would still champion you into whatever new organization that they're in. Maybe they didn't work out in the last one because of something out of their control. And that allocation of who gets assigned that champion and the message just changes, as well as someone maybe that you didn't interact with during the sales opportunity. So particularly, we have a lot of users that we didn't interact with, but they're going into the Zilla platform, and we're tracking those people, and we're like, hey, how's your experience with Zilla? We noticed you moved, and did it work well for you at the last company? Are you interested in using Zilla at the new company, right? So you have a lighter touch message there. So it's something to think about, all those different people that you potentially touch on and how they could be a quote unquote champion as part of this experience.
Yeah, 100%. I think we can dive into the Salesforce architecture and give you a few very concrete examples and structure through which we can orchestrate job changes in Salesforce. So for those who are familiar with that Salesforce concept, account contact relationship is a native object in Salesforce, and it's a junction object that enables many-to-many relationship. So think about it as you can see on the graph, as a junction object between account and contact. which means that you can now relate a contact to multiple accounts. He's going to have a primary account. Ideally, that primary account is a contact that he's working for, or the most active into. But it can also be related to other accounts, which enabled us to create that world where when contact change company, we can still relate them to their past company, keeping some kind of historical relationship. So how do we structure this in Salesforce? At a very high level, I'll give you some quick architecture graphs here. So stage one is we have two companies, two accounts, account A, account B. They each have a champion, a contact one and contact two. And so we, by default, create that account contact relationship. This is going to be standard. At the moment you activate that feature in Salesforce, the object will be created for every contact created per an account. So you don't have to worry about this, but the moment contact one here under account A changes company, we want to basically create an additional account contact relationship. So account contact relationship B1, and contact one is going to be primary linked to account B, but we don't delete the account contact relationship A1. We maintain it, which is going to ensure all the activities and historical data that is related to contact one is also related to contact A and contact B and account B. So that basically maintains the overall context of the relationship. Something that I could have added here is also, it could be a good practice depending on what you want to achieve to create a custom object for signals as a whole. So you can have a custom Salesforce custom object called signal with different type of signal, and champion tracking or job change could be one of those signals. And whenever you track one of those, you would then basically relate that custom object to both the contact that move and to the corresponding account. I'll pause here. Any questions on this? Any comments? Does that make logical sense to everyone, Salesforce users?
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay. Awesome. So next, I think Jason, you rightfully said earlier, not all job changes are created equal. So, those are a few tricks that tips and tricks we'll go over. So I think, when you have job changes, I think there's a few different buckets that you want to look at. You want to track, as many people as possible. And they don't necessarily have to be your champions, right? Ideally, obviously, champions are the most obvious one. They're the one that you've closed won. They're power user, they're admin users. Those are obviously going to be the one you want to follow and make sure you track. But there's a broader set of users that you also want to look at because they're going to give you powerful indications of potential opportunity. So you have end users, so people that have high product users or that are admins or owners of the accounts, but not necessarily the champion. Those you want to keep tracking, and then you potentially also have prospects, people that haven't signed a contract with you. They started, they were in conversation with you guys, or you lost the account for whatever reason, and those are still people you'd want to track to some extent. They might not be as good of a champion to track, but they still are interesting people to look at. And on top of that, you want to narrow down the right ICP. What's very important here is that you narrow down the right ICP, and that you look at the new job title that the company is that the contact is adopting, and make sure it belongs to the ICP, including everything that is obviously investor, advisor, partner, all those things you want to exclude, and you want to narrow down, use specific job titles, meaning a person that wasn't a champion in his past company can become one if his job changes. So all this is to map out very carefully before you launch those kind of initiatives. And then I mentioned this earlier, but making sure upon job change, that you think about finding the new champion in the previous account, and that's going to be very important for you to focus on churn. That could be something that the CS function, if you have one, can focus on, but making sure that you replace that person within the existing account, especially if it's a current customer. Otherwise, you're going to face potential churn. And then obviously the orchestration piece, which is making sure the routing, the alerting is being set up, is something we'll go over with Jason in a second, and how we orchestrate this in Cargo. But having a set of templates, emails that are already prepared. I would recommend a sequence of like 3-4 emails, 3-4 touch points with the type of messaging you can see here. And the idea is that whenever those signals are captured, those leads or accounts or contacts automatically engaged and pushed into a given sequence. That sequence can be manual, but at least the rep is on top of those things, because there's a time element that you don't want to miss out on. I'll pause here before. Yeah, sorry.
So I think Esteban has an interesting question that might be it might be a good time to address now. Esteban, do you want to unmute yourself and pose the question?
Yeah. Hi. Not just like based on the model that you presented in the last slide, and seeing like this middle layer that works between that helps solving this many-to-many relationship between accounts and contact. So I was just putting there just to see if I understand correctly now, contacts that works in multiple companies. Probably have you seen like this? This is another like kind of pitfall. Whereas they can be or not the champion necessarily, but you still would like to see all those relationships on the picture. Like, for example, you have an executive guy that works in, I don't know, like 3-4 SaaS tech companies, that you would like to keep an eye about all these relationships and activity the same person can have across multiple accounts. So,
yeah,
right?
Exactly, yeah. And so you're always going to have, unfortunately, you can only have one primary contact, and that's going to be the company that he's the most active into. Then you can also do something where you can have different, you can have a field on the account relationship type, where you break down the level of engagement that the contact has with the corresponding account. Could be advisor, could be, and that's the way you can keep track of those things. It has to be manual, especially for many-to-many relationship, but that's unfortunately the only way to go about this.
No, but it's cool. So it means like when salespeople are working over those contacts, they can go into the platform and like choose the role they have during this deal, and they can treat them like each of those.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks.
Like I had a question like before moving forward, because the slide on the screen is super relevant to my use case, identifying new champions in previous accounts. So just to give you a quick example, like my company, we deal with IT teams a lot. So let's say manager in IT, that's a super common role. Like a company might have hundreds of IT managers, given the size of the company. So that is super challenging for us to figure out like who is backfilling that account in the previous company. Because I have like among 20 or 30 ID managers to choose from. So yeah, like I would love to like learn about this, and if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, ultimately, I think an important indication is, where is headquarters? Like, usually like for example, in IT companies, you're going to have headquarters employees are going to be the one that are most likely to be key decision makers. And then we also look at the location of the past IT manager and seeing some kind of like trend to identify who could be the person taking over. But at the end of the day, I think relying on seniority and job title and then reaching out to a couple of people within the organization and having them to guide you towards who's taking over the ownership of that specific tool can be great. It can also be interesting to explore in a conversation with the past champion, understanding who he transitioned, who he passed over the management of the tool to, like who's the person taking over. That would be my recommendation here.
Yeah, something that's been valuable for me to solve for this use case is have orchestrations for job postings as well. So you can have job posting streams for your customers. So you can have job posting alerts for titles of people who typically are your champions, whether that is accounts that you're prospecting to or your customers. So you know that, okay, this is an account that we've worked with that champion and this is a potential new person coming in. We'll give you some visibility to that. I've used Cognizant to do that, which fits quite well, and Cargo orchestrates all of that.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Jason, do you want to dive in? Do you want to take the lead on
my
the
screen?
Yep.
And show what I've done here. Right, that's showing okay for everybody.
All good.
All right, cool. So this is my champion tracking workflow, and this is using the model from the standard contacts table in Salesforce. So pretty straightforward to get the data model ready for that. I do have a few straightforward filtering conditions, and this orchestration, I am just doing champion tracking for our customer accounts. So if I wanted to do this for just different accounts, I would have a different orchestration and workflow to run that. And I also just wanted to remove some bad data from this, right? If they're already validated that they're no longer at the company, I want to exclude those. If they don't have a LinkedIn page on the contact record, or if the email is already invalid, then those indicate records that probably have already left that company, and I just want to make sure they don't go into that flow. Then as I start to look at all of those contacts, what I start to do, and this is something you can really decide on, and hopefully this shows okay here, I'll zoom in for a little bit. I've chosen that I want this orchestration to actually run daily. So as opposed to maybe every week or monthly, where we'll get like a bulk notification of new champions changes, I wanted this to just be a continuous check. So every contact gets appended with something we call a last champion tracking check. So you'll see as I go through this workflow, I will note if a contact has been checked, if their position changed, and document that timestamp. So the next time this runs, they'll be excluded from that if it was within 30 days. So that just gives some variance to that because it's kind of unpredictable about when these contacts will change. So we just go through all the data and just check everybody every 30 days. So every day there could be a potential for a new champion with a job change. And then of course in there, anyone that has never been checked, those will also be eligible to go to the next steps. Then from that just starts with a LinkedIn enrich to get their LinkedIn details. I do a fallback for any reason if I just couldn't get any data from their LinkedIn, which can happen on occasion. I'll just note that it was checked. So there might have been an issue with that LinkedIn. They didn't have a LinkedIn page available, couldn't get data from that. And I'll just remove them until the next 30 days and we'll try again eventually. If it does in fact have data, so we'll see here, this filter just make sure company information come back. So some people could have a LinkedIn page, but they aren't actually at a company currently. So this checks the URL for their current position and make sure there's data there. And then I will get details about that account, that the current contact record I'm checking, and just pull that in for later steps. And then I branch from there. So this branch actually does the check for, has that company detail of the LinkedIn enriched position, is that different from what we know about their account? So there's a few checks here. I'm just saying, is the LinkedIn account name or the LinkedIn company name, is that different from the Salesforce account details, indicating that their primary position in LinkedIn does not match their account on their contact record, indicating that they've left that company. So if that is false, I just simply say, all right, we checked that champion, they're still at the same position, we don't need to do another check for 30 days. If it's true, I have a custom API call here, but essentially it's doing a call to Cognizant just to get details about that contact. So these nodes here just get the information about that contact to try to get as much information about that champion at their new position.
Jason?
Yep.
A quick question. How do you account for potential new position that are actually, out of ICP or, partnership investor those kind of, do you have some exclusion here?
I don't exclude them here right now. How I am doing that is I just assume if they're a contact associated to a customer account, we want to know about that change anyway. And I notify the rep and essentially leave it to the rep to decide. So in this particular stream, since they're customers, I'm not sending out any messaging or notifications. Since we're assuming it's a high value, I want the rep to be notified and them to make the decision how they want to address this person. Is this going to be a LinkedIn message, a phone call, or is it even worth the time to actually go and chase?
Nice.
So from there, we're still doing some enrichment details. So I have a branch to check if Cognizant got data back. I'll continue and then search for some contact records. Something I learned early on is that some data providers like Cognizant or Apollo, ZoomInfo, they might not always have information about a job change early on if it's relatively recent. I found Hunter to get the contact details for new positions rather reliably. So if my primary data provider, which is Cognizant, doesn't have details about that person at the new company, I'll then fall back and use Hunter to get their email details at the new company. So just something to think about. Might be worth trying that. And then essentially a few steps here. I won't drill into detail on each of them, but I'll do a search in Salesforce for that new company. Make sure we have an account record. To Nico's earlier point, we don't want to duplicate company records. So we'll find an existing one. And if there isn't an existing one, we'll go out to our data provider, get that company details, and update that record and enrich it where it makes sense. So that's where we do that, create that contact record. Once we've done all those steps and made sure we have that account record, and update. And this is where I made the decision. We're actually creating a new contact record, and we're going to update that. And then finally, after we've done those steps of marking the old contact record that they're no longer at the company, created a custom signal object. So some of these things are going to be optional depending on your use case. We choose to keep the old record, just mark it deprecated, create a signal record, and then I route that to the team. Typically, I would route that based upon who the previous contact owner was, if there was one, or what would supersede that is the account owner of the new company. That would go to that rep, and then there would be a notification to both reps that this person that worked with this rep is now at a company belonging to this rep. Go work together and talk to each other about how do we engage that champion. And then that goes to a Slack notification. So nothing fancy really there about how we work this. We're not including any messaging or anything for these. We just want to be smart about tracking all of these people, that there was a champion change and a signal change, and then notifying the reps so they can go out and action that, and they decide what the messaging is to those people.
I think Esteban had a question for Jason. Esteban, go ahead.
Yeah, so practical question. So I noticed that, as you said, we don't want to duplicate accounts, for example. So whenever we review a contact that changed into a new company because was a champion, you will see first if it already exists on Salesforce, for example, in this case. And you do a search. I noticed that, yeah, this one by LinkedIn URL probably, which is in this custom field, LinkedIn __C, and then website and name. I'm assuming these are like exact matches.
Yeah, that's exactly right. These are exact matches. And that is also why I do OR statements, because it's not always going to be completely reliable that each of these are going to be hit. So as long as any of these are a hit, it's typically going to be that they're an existing account. It's not perfect, and I do have other orchestrations specifically for account merging. So I know Cargo recently released that to do an action for Salesforce merging, which has helped a lot. So I have some additional logic outside of this to deduplicate.
Oh yeah, nice. That was about also like my question, because if I understand that if it is an exact match, it means that all the URLs, for example, for LinkedIn and website, like are already formatted if we want to really match the existence. You know what I mean? Like, for example, if the enrichment from LinkedIn, it gives you an HTTPS, and what we have in Salesforce is www, you know, and and if they're not pre-format with the exact match, they will not be found. So and question about it, like, is there a way within Cargo here, like, to kind of pre-format, or you need like an extra ETL tool, or assuming that you have an internal flow or Apex process for formatting?
Yeah, some things I've done, certainly you can use the expression editor here to take, like, because I work with Cognism, ZoomInfo, Apollo, and sometimes those URLs come back, they might be a full web URL as opposed to a domain. So you can actually use the generate expression with the AI, works great in Cargo, and say any URL, I just want the domain from that, and have that do the pre-formatting. So I've done that in some cases. I have some external orchestration that runs also that just makes every website just the short domain. So I know with every other orchestration, I don't necessarily need to do that, because the data is always going to be the same.
One question, and so if you use this AI and you like ask, like, for example, pre-format in the beer format, for example, this will wrote like a formula in JS or TypeScript or something?
Yeah, exactly. If I can jump in, Jason, if I may. So basically what you're looking at there is the expression builder. So inside those curly brackets that you see, that's JavaScript template, right? And so because you have JavaScript, you can basically remove prefix and suffix for the domain using like a match function. And of course, we can talk about this more offline. But yeah, within that expression, you have a lot of power. So we also have some dedicated templates just for deduplication use cases for each of them, for all the cases where you can have like a similar sounding domain. You can have like matches, which are not exact matches.
Yeah, cool. So
happy to take this offline if you want. Like we can deep dive into it.
Cool.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I found the generated expression to be super helpful for use cases like that. So it's definitely something I always try out.
Cool. Thanks.
Yep. Any other?
Awesome. Is there any other question for Jason on that specific workflow?
So we still have 5 minutes for this workshop. Nico, how would you like to proceed? Should we take like an example from someone from the audience, or is there some like theory we still need to cover on champions?
Yeah, I think if anyone from the audience has a concrete example and is trying to get some assistance on how to launch this or to look at an existing workflow, that would be a great time. If not, we'll find any question was also welcome. And if not, we can wrap it up also a bit earlier.
And I'm going to pick on Harkarat here because we've been chatting about this workflow for a while. Harkarat, maybe like if you still want to, like maybe we can take your example if no one else wants to volunteer.
No, 100%, lad. I think this was super useful. I've got a bunch of ideas. Like I cannot, like given the condition of our Salesforce at our company, like I cannot like launch this full-fledged sequence, but I can really simplify this and make a simplified version of this for my use case. Like for example, like my use case was when like champions bounce from one company to the other, like updating the old account. Because what has happened in my company, the way our Salesforce is set up, like 2 or 3 years down the line, you might find 10 CTOs in the same company because their accounts have not been updated, like they haven't been back updated. So that kind of makes our Salesforce useless because I end up going on LinkedIn and checking like who's the current CTO anyways. So that was a big challenge for me. I'm trying to work on that. And yeah, like I think you already answered one of the questions around the location mapping. Like how do I figure out who is filling up the champions, like up champion in the previous account? That is a big pain point for us. And yeah, I mean, yeah, like backfilling Salesforce is like the challenging bit for me right now, like updating those old accounts. So like if, yeah.
It's interesting because, I mean, to some extent, there's always going to be like in order to have Salesforce completely clean, you'll need to run basically what Jason showed on every single contact, not only contact within account that have opportunity close one, because obviously those are the best one. But if you want to, in a perfect world, you want to run that contact schedule cron job on the entirety of your Salesforce, which can get costly, right?
Yeah.
So I think it is just a matter of, you know, to what extent having those old, you know, contact being a problem from a business standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
What I tend to do, aside from that specific process of contact tracking, is that I have enrichment jobs on contact level enrichment jobs
Mm-hmm.
that run on a quarterly basis. Depends on your industry, but usually it's like a quarterly basis is good.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to basically re-enrich every contact past a certain threshold in your funnel to make sure that you confirm that they're still working for the same company.
Yeah.
And that job can basically help you to reorganize on an ongoing basis that contact to account relationship. Even if they're not champions, you might not want to reach out to them, but at least you keep things in order so that, you know, when they become engaged in an opportunity, you have them in the right place.
No, 100%. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to push for in my company right now. It's a slow process. Yeah, as you know, like Salesforce, like our company is like 8 years old at this point. It's a big data set. Yeah. That's the pain of my existence. But yeah, this was super useful. Like I got some good ideas from this. I'll make a simplified version of this for my use case for now.
And on simplified versions, since we're at time, I'm going to leave a plug here. I'm going to be working with Jason and Nico to build templates inside Cargo for these champions tracking scenarios, right? So moving to different companies, backfilling previous companies, and so on and so forth. If you want to participate in the creation of these templates, then please ping me on the Slack.
Okay.
Otherwise, stay tuned because we'll be sharing these templates on our website and then helping all the members in Slack for that. And with that, since we're on time, I would like to thank Nico and Jason for bringing their expertise and like lifting the curtain on the workflows. That was really instructive. I think we all had a pretty good session. I will be sharing a replay for this session. I'll be putting it up on the YouTube and sharing it tomorrow. So if you want to see a part that you've missed or someone who couldn't make it, please share it with them. And please like and subscribe our YouTube channel so we can get more reach. Well,
nice to see you all.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Tarek, for having us.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Ciao, ciao.